There have been numerous tales of demonic possession throughout history, many of which result in either the individual's horrific death or a church-sanctioned exorcism, the forceful eviction of the demon back to the netherworld. But are there really malicious spirits capable of forcing themselves into a human and seizing control of their body? Or is the entire concept of demonic possession a lie fostered by hoaxes and overactive imaginations? Join us as we count down 5 alleged demonic cases. Straight in at number 5. Robert the Doll. Robert the Doll is a child's worst nightmare. On the outside, it appears harmless enough, just a hand-sewn small boy dressed in a sailor's garb, but at night it comes to life and assaults youngsters. According to the account, the doll was given to a young Eugene Otto, the son of 2 artists who had recently relocated to Key West, Florida, at the close of the 19th century. The gift-giver is a young Jamaican witch employed by the Ottos as Eugene's nanny. Eugene began chatting to the doll in his room, and the Ottos soon became aware of this, and another voice would respond. A few weeks later, Eugene began screaming throughout the night that Robert was attempting to kill him. Neighbors reported seeing the doll move through the windows of the residence. Servants in the house reported being afraid because the doll would chuckle while their backs were turned. They noticed shadows as the doll ran across the room. Eugene grew up, inheriting his parents' home and keeping Robert the doll close. The doll continued to frighten guests, but Eugene appeared to have a weird connection with it. He would become enraged when his wife covered up the doll or stored it in the attic, claiming that Robert needed a view of the street. After Eugene died in 1972, the doll plagued the new owners of the property for a few years before being sent to a museum in Key West. You can glimpse the terrible specter of the night for only a few dollars. He also, strangely, has a Twitter account. At number 4, Bobby Jindal. Bobby Jindal is the former governor of Louisiana. His political record is unremarkable, except for one little detail. In 1990, at Brown University, he cast a demon out of a classmate. He chronicled the entire meeting in a paper he published in the New Oxford Review a few years later. Jindal went to a university prayer group with a good friend, a girl named Susan. She had recently been diagnosed with cancer, and a friend of hers had committed suicide just a few weeks before. She was in a bad mental state. Susan fainted during the prayer meeting due to a seizure. The students crowded around her, and Susan's sister claimed she was possessed by a demon. Bobby Jindal, along with around a dozen other students, placed his hands on Susan and yelled at Satan to leave her alone. Susan writhed on the floor for a few more minutes before waking up and seemed to be okay. At number 3, the Dybbuk Box. It began when antiques dealer Kevin Mannis bought an ancient wine cabinet at an estate sale in 2000. The ancient wooden box came with a story. It had belonged to the estate owner's grandmother, who kept it stashed away so no one could open it. She'd nicknamed it a Dybbuk box. Dybbuks are spirits from Jewish mythology who attach themselves to people and objects, causing misfortune, sorrow, and death. Manis received a panicked call from his secretary after leaving the newly purchased box in his office. Someone or something was shouting and breaking items in the office. Someone has also locked all of the doors. Manis went to the scene to find all of the light bulbs in the office smashed and his secretary sobbing in a corner. He gave his mother the wine box as a gift, and she had a stroke, leaving her permanently disabled. After repeated unsuccessful attempts to sell or give away the box, Manis decided to keep it at home. Manis gradually lost his mind. He started seeing shadows in the corners of his eyes, waking up in the middle of the night with the sensation that someone was breathing on his neck, and his house began to smell like cat urine and jasmine. Finally, he listed the Dybbuk box on eBay, along with the narrative behind it, and requested that someone with demonology experience take it. It was purchased by a student named Yosef Nitsky, who then relisted it on eBay after experiencing the same unusual happenings as Manis. Strange scents, moving shadows, and an unexpected invasion of cockroaches in his home. The Dybbuk box is currently owned by Jason Haxton, a museum curator who collects paranormal artifacts. At number 2, Son of Sam. David Berkowitz, the self-proclaimed Son of Sam, was one of the most brutal serial killers in American history. He began murdering individuals in 1976 and continued for a year until he was apprehended by authorities. The murders were all the same. He would approach his victims at night, shoot them with a .44 pistol, and then leave without saying anything. At one killing, he left a note for the police, which mentioned Father Sam, who drinks blood and orders him to go out and kill. Berkowitz's real-life father was named Tony, so who was Sam? Berkowitz claimed Sam was the monster who possessed his neighbor's dog. When Berkowitz was captured in 1977, he made a complete confession, stating that the dog communicated to him and informed him when to kill someone. He referred to Sam as a demon at times, but also as the spirit of an evil man who lived 6,000 years ago and had discovered a conduit through the Labrador puppy living next door. Whether the story was made up to get him an insanity plea at his trial or not, the combination of the horrific note and a demon-possessed dog sends shivers up your spine. If you enjoy these short stories, stick around for another one right after this. In at our top spot, the Conjuring house. In 1971, the Perron family moved into their new home in rural Burrillville, Rhode Island, an 18th-century farmhouse. It was supposed to be the beginning of a new life for the parents and their 5 young kids. However, it was not in the way they expected. Carolyn Perron, the mother, awoke after only a few nights at the house to the ghost of an elderly woman hanging by the neck from her bedroom ceiling. Over the next 3 weeks, odd sounds came from the house's crawl spaces and cellar. Doors would open and slam shut, and food would sweat. With the help of paranormal investigators, the Perrons discovered that an 18th-century witch allegedly sacrificed her own kid to Satan, opened the house to the devil, and then hung herself. The Perrons grew to believe that the witch's ghost, as well as a slew of demons and ghosts from other suicides on the property, were haunting them. Andrea Perron, one of the daughters, insists that the narrative is entirely accurate and that her mother got possessed at one point. She writes, The only time I was actually afraid in that house was the night I believed I saw my mother die. She shouted in a voice we had never heard before, and a force beyond this world flung her 20 feet into another room. The Perron narrative inspired the film The Conjuring, but the film does not convey the entire story. After Mrs. Perron was possessed, the family stayed in the house for almost 9 years and just learned to live with the spirits. I would love to know your thoughts on these stories. Are they true, or are they works of fiction? Drop a comment and share your thoughts.